David Hernandez, what's going on, man?
How's it going? Happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm happy that you're here. I'm excited to talk with you today. I think it's going to make for a very unique conversation because I believe this is the first time where like openly we're talking about a company that's come from legacy to legal, right? And I think that's really the bedrock and the foundation of Happy Munkey, which you're the chief development officer for. So, I mean, let's do two parts here, David, to kick things off. Tell us a little bit about yourself. I understand you were born and raised in New York City, which is where you currently reside now.
Yep.
Um, and then yeah, tell us about your pathway, the journey from for Happy Munkey.
Yeah, so myself, born and raised in Harlem, still live uptown. I've been in cannabis for since 2016, or I guess like legal can or semi-legal cannabis, trying to that legacy of legal transition has been a like multiple year journey for us. But I got my cannabis start, just like selling weed here in high school and then went away to college to Baltimore. And then it actually in DC, it became legal to gift weed with the Initiative 71. So I was like, why would I sell weed to my liberal arts
What does that
college?
mean? Gift
So
weed.
to gift weed, similar to what's happening here in New York right now, it was you could grow it and you could give it out, but you could not sell it, right? And
Okay.
so created this like loophole market where people were selling $50 stickers, and with that you get gifted an eighth, or buying, selling $300 hoodies and you get gifted an ounce, things.
That makes so much sense. I was thinking they might go the donation route too. It's like, hey, you don't have to buy it, but you can donate, or something. But gifting, I mean, yeah, you just add another item to it and then, sneak cannabis in the back end.
Exactly, and it was definitely a loophole that in DC got super exploited. But I was down there, and they had these sessions, which were these open air kind of farmers markets, but for cannabis. And I started my own cannabis company down there in 2016 called Charm City THC, and we were making edibles and all this other kind of fun stuff, and got really in the mix of that community. And then from there around 2017, Happy Munkey started up north, and I got wind of it. It was actually Happy Monkey is actually a family company, and so my uncle is one of the owners of Happy Monkey, but
Okay.
still, uh, he just at the time kind of flirted with it and was like, "Hey, you should come and just see what I'm doing." And I was like, "Well, I'm doing something down in DC. You should come down and I'll go up." And we kind of like had a big thought exchange, and we brought a lot of that culture that we saw down in DC. And what we did with Happy Monkey was the exact opposite. We didn't want to do what everybody else was doing. We didn't want to be doing these open air farmers markets. But before I came back up to New York, I got into caregiving. I'm a licensed caregiver down in Maryland, and I would help find clean medicine for patients and do some personal shopping for patients. And I've helped women with cancer and a bunch of different ailments find clean medicine, Rick Simpson oil, all that kind of stuff. And then got into emceeing Cannagather, which back in the day was this kind of community event that was
Mhm.
based here in New York, but I opened up the Baltimore and DC chapters, and so I was hosting these monthly
Wow.
business to business educational events down there. And then simultaneously, like 2 to 3 times a week, coming up to New York City to come see what was happening at Happy Monkey. And so for people, and then I've been with Happy Monkey full time since probably early 2019, but on and off since we started 2017. Uh, so Happy Monkey got our claim to fame was that we had a 5,000 square foot lounge in Times Square that we
Wow.
operated like a nightclub with no alcohol served, only cannabis. We had a full cannabis dispensary there at the time, completely legacy market, black market, illegal, whatever word you want to use for it. And it was truly,
Wow.
if you know, you know. Yeah. So,
So it was
um,
like a need to know or like word of mouth kind of thing, not obviously not publicly advertised. And I mean, how heavily did you have to monitor like people coming in and out? I mean, did you recognize faces? Like, how did that all work?
so there was essentially it was all referral based, right? And this was, New York City has a big underground culture, whether it be for cannabis back in the day, psychedelics, sex work, and all the different, vices New York City has. It's Gotham
Sure.
City for a reason. There's a huge underground scene, and so we at the time kind of created a safe space for cannabis users in that safe space, in that cannabis scene. And so people were coming and bringing people that they knew would, keep the secret. We didn't promote on Instagram. We didn't do any of the stuff that, now you would imagine with the legal business you'd have to do. It was truly word of mouth. And we went from one event a month to two events a month to we worked our way up to 7 days a week, 6 p.m. to 4 a.m. open. And on a
Wow.
slow night, we saw about 250 people. And so
Wow.
it was just a true nightclub kind of energy, but with cannabis. So our constituency is predominantly female because we created a safe space for women to go out and not have to worry with drunk dudes or
Right.
rowdy people. We didn't have fights or any of the things you'd imagine at a normal New York City nightclub. It was just truly people, from the bus driver to the billionaire enjoying themselves. And I've seen athletes, billionaires, lawyers, doctors, and bus drivers all on the same table, and they'll all go talk to the bus driver because he was the only one who brought a lighter. Like it was one of these like big melting pots of just kind of really took away all the like the clothes of society, and people were just there enjoying cannabis. And that's how we got our start. And we were doing that well before it was legal, but we also would invite politicians to the space. We would invite press to the space so they can kind of see what this like legal, not like pre-legal space could look like, but a compliant space. We would travel a lot and just see
Wait,
what was
so while
happening.
y'all were operating illicitly, you would invite sitting elected officials to come visit it and check it out?
Yeah, because we knew what we had was something special, and it wasn't just an internal idea. Like we, the owners of the Munkey, and even myself, we were selling weed illegally for a long time,
Yeah,
and it wasn't something that we just woke up like, hey, let's create this brand and start bringing politicians here. It was some of the constituents and like people who would come to the club and who were just like, hey, I work in the government, I work in Albany, I work
I
here.
see.
I would love to bring my boss here. Like he should see this. Like we're talking about legalizing weed. Like I've been all, or a big cannabis CEO who's been to all these different states. It's like I've never seen something like this. And
Gotcha.
back
So it
in
wasn't like you guys pitching them. It was more like people that were attending or participating at the club. They worked for government. Like you said, they would flag it to their boss, like, hey, something's working here, right? Like you said, there
yeah,
is no violence, there is no fights. People are relaxing and enjoying themselves. That's amazing, man. That's great.
yeah, and in 2018, Forbes called us the Studio 54 of cannabis because it was really that like who's who, of if you were supposed to be there, you were meant to be there at that time. And we ran that up until COVID, and New York got hit super hard with the whole COVID outbreak and everything like that. So we shut down our doors, and even though we didn't allow people to take photos in the space, we had internally been shooting photos and a lot of content during that time. And since we shut our doors, we're like, hey, like why not start releasing some of this content? Let's we started a podcast that we were releasing. We're like, hey, let's actually dive into this podcast. We had a newsletter that we turned into a magazine, 56 pages every month that we ran throughout COVID. And then we also had Happy Munkey TV, which was content we shot at the club. And we were releasing on YouTube. And that really kind of helped make our people knew about us nationally at that point, just like in certain cannabis circles. But that really helped kind of pop the lid off in terms of more people who've not been able to come to the club and experience it to understand who we were. And coming out of COVID, we instead of doing the club again, we decided to start looking at larger venues because coming out of COVID, we outgrew our space, and so we were looking at partnerships and experiential
Probably because of
partnerships.
probably because of all that promotion, right? I mean, from online, people being more aware of the brand and what you all are doing.
100%. And we jumped from, coming out of COVID, we knew one, what we were doing was still illegal, right? And so it's just like, hey, like let's not go back to that since we have so much, so much visibility and optics as to what we're doing. Let's try and like push the envelope and see what we can do to kind of keep breaking ceilings. And our first event was we took over Bobby Van Steakhouse on Wall Street, like literally across the street from the stock exchange. We threw an event there. And they at the time didn't even let Wall Street guys smoke cigars down there. But we threw an event in the original JP Morgan vault, and that was like under the restaurant, and threw
Yeah.
a canvas event there.
Wow.
And
That's
we did
iconic,
that, and
man. Yeah.
yeah, man, I mean we're New Yorkers. We wanted to do it big, and then from then on, we partnered with the Van Gogh Immersive Experience to do like a full 2-night takeover to like have their like after hours exhibit with the projection mapping and cannabis and acro yoga and all this craziness. And we did that 2 nights in a row, sold it out both nights. And since then, I've just been doing like larger experiential events and jumping into merchandising. And now we're awaiting 2 card licenses. We applied, both Vlad and Ramon, who are the 2 co-founders. They applied for card applications, which are retail licenses here in New York State. And so we're just waiting for the next allotment of licenses to come out, and fingers crossed that we're in it. But we've really been transitioning from the club days to where we are now, where like I'm in the Happy Munkey office as I talk, and we very much have pivoted into what we want to be, embracing compliance, embracing legality, and embracing a company coming out of the shadows and doing it legally.
Mm-hmm. So basically, the same model, right? Social consumption concept, but adhering to, of course, the new regulations that are in place for the legal market in New York City. And like you said, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, so we've been, no worries. No, we've done some experiential events. Like our next one is July 10th for 7/10. We're going to be doing a takeover of the Museum of Sex here in the city. It's going to be a very, all 6 floors, and it's going to be a very adult and fun cannabis event. But that's not our only model now. Now we're awaiting retail licenses with the hope of opening up, traditional retail stores.
I see.
Now we're not really trying to jump back into consumption right away, since we've done that so much. We really want to kind of keep evolving the brand, move on to retail, delivery, and the experiences are built into what we do, but it's not just the bread and butter anymore.
Right. Yeah. And that's, I mean, the natural progression for any company, right? You're evolving, you're growing. You don't start kind of doing one thing, especially, I mean, like in the tech space, we've seen that be evident, and then in cannabis as well, right? There's so many opportunities. So that's amazing. And I'm just curious though. I mean, I've had guests on where we've talked about the New York cannabis market, particularly, the legacy operations and illicit operations that are operating there. I think there's like 1,400, right? So many that the NYPD can't control it. And then you're talking about like even as early as 2000. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, like 2017 or 18, when you were, having these constituents, who are attending these clubs, report back to these elected officials. So my question is, it seems like it's very open, right? That like cannabis is prevalent. So is it that they just kind of turn a blind eye? Like what's happening currently with the market as it transitions to adult use?
So I would say right now it's extremely oversaturated, and I want to set a distinction between the kind of legacy operators, people like Happy Munkey and, like-minded people like ourselves are, and the, 1,400 plus delis and smoke shops selling weed nowadays, and shrooms and a bunch of other stuff. They're not obeying the law when it comes to tobacco products. They're selling illegal vapes. They're selling psychedelics. They're selling cannabis products that are not properly tested. You don't know if it's sprayed hemp or whatever the situation is. They're really just selling anything. And so at the moment, I think the culture around smoke shops versus, more of a quality cannabis, they're very separate. And so in terms of legislation or more policing of it, I don't want to see anyone go to jail for selling weed. I don't think people should be in jail for selling weed. Right. But I do think as someone who's going for a license or 2 licenses, there needs to be some deliberate kind of action taken to kind of stop and curb these stores from just rampantly selling, undercutting the license program. And I think ways that I think the state is approaching that is finding the landlord. So as opposed to finding the business owner, which, they'll just switch deeds or switch leases, and the business owner will just pretend to disappear and they'll keep it running. Mm-hmm. Finding the landlord essentially leads to the landlord wanting to evict that tenant. Like a landlord's not going to take
they're not going to put up with that. Yeah.
Yeah, they're not going to get a $5,000 daily fine and be cool with that. And there's no one, weed is so cheap nowadays and so available. No one's making, that money hand over fist to that point where you can eat a $5,000 a day fine in addition to your rent,
Right.
So.
Right.
So I hope that curbs some of it, but I have a brother who's 17 and he was showing me a cart he got. And I was like, where'd you get that? He's like, oh, a deli on St. Mark Street. and I felt like a soccer mom. I was like, "What? No, that's not okay. Like, you shouldn't
I've
be
found
getting."
yeah, I found myself doing that too, man. My sister-in-law's like boyfriends will come by and they have this like, D8 cart and it's I was like, where'd you get that? Like a gas station. I'm like, no, what are you doing?
Yeah,
Don't buy from
exactly.
gas stations. Like, yeah, it's you don't know what's in there though, to your point. I mean, it's not properly tested. It could be sprayed. I mean, there could be all kinds of mycotoxins or heavy metals or pesticides. I mean, who knows, right? And there's so much testing that needs to be involved. So yeah, and so on the topic of consumption lounges, I mean, there's this talk about NYC, really stepping up and doing that, but then there's Vegas, right? That's also like a tourist destination, obviously internationally, where they're going to be opening up. So how do you think they're going to kind of I don't know, stack up against each other? Like, what would be the differences? I mean, how do you see all that playing out in between those two markets?
So I've spent a lot of time in Vegas, and obviously live here in the city. And I just want to say, New York's hospitality and the way we're going to take consumption lounges, I think is going to be fundamentally different than what you see in Vegas. Right? Vegas has a very set style, right? Like you can go to all the different casinos, but they have very similar vibes and the way they kind of take care of you and things like that. There's not a lot of like true unique kind of hospitality happening amongst the different casinos. And I know the consumption lounges are going to be a little different. I've been to the new Woo Cannabis Cafe, and I know they just opened up a brand new like concert venue kind of vibe on the reservation land. They're able to sell cannabis and all that kind of stuff. So I love what they're doing, but they're not really regulated at all. New Woo is Native American land, so they're able to kind of
Mm-hmm.
do as they please. And
Mm-hmm.
I think regulation wise hasn't really caught up to the culture around consumption lounges. So I know they're rolling out licensed lounges in Vegas pretty soon. But what New York has is still very much feeding that like underground ethos. Shout out Work and Roll, which is a super amazing community space down here in Chelsea. You have Astor Club, which is really trying to curate a connoisseur culture smoke lounge, right? And these are people who are creating safe places for people to kind of exchange ideas, find good, clean cannabis, and really, really focusing on the consumer in a way that, and they're fundamentally different, and they're fundamentally different than what Happy Munkey was when it was running. And I think,
Mm-hmm.
no one in New York City goes to the same restaurant 7 days a week, 3 times a week, right? We look for different energies and vibes. And I think we're going to really be able to cultivate that here, as opposed to a Vegas where, there is a local community, but it's so tourist heavy that it could be a little bit more gimmicky, right? Where
Right.
people are just going in for a couple of days, 72 hours in Vegas. They'll hit that lounge once or twice. And maybe when they come back in a year for the next conference or next whatever, they'll be there. But it's not going to have that kind of like recidivism and like repeat visitors that you're going to have with clubs here, because we have 10 million people who live here currently, and it's not all going to be tourist based.
Yeah.
So,
No,
but
that
I'm
makes
excited to see experientially what happens in Vegas. It's gonna be fun. They always do stuff big. So
Yeah. No, I think that's well said. And it's just like it's so funny with the consumption lounges because it's such a like there's such a big appetite, I feel like, for them, but they're just not as evident or prevalent yet, right? So it's like there's this people that are just waiting, like, okay, when do we start? And everyone's talking about what they're going to look like and how great they're going to be, and it's almost like we can visualize them and predict what's going to happen, but we're still waiting for it to hit. So
and and when you're in Vegas, you have a house, right? You could probably smoke in your house, in your yard, or somewhere, right? Like I
right.
live in an apartment building, and I mean, I even now I could smoke in my house, but most of the time I go downstairs, I go walk my dog, and I smoke. Or if I'm smoking dabs, I'll be upstairs. But it's fun to go and have a communal space. I'm not going to invite three of my friends all the time over to my house to smoke weed. Like
Right.
that's not what happens here. So having these communal spaces where it's almost like a bar, but with more of a lounge vibe, at least from the ones that I've enjoyed and frequented. I know there's a lot of different types around here, but I think there's some people doing it really right. And then there's also some people really racing to the bottom. So it's a mixture.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And I agree with your point earlier as well, which was cannabis, the concept of these consumption lounges, they bring people together, right? I mean, that's what the flower does. And I when I lived in an apartment, that's where I met my wife, and it was actually because of cannabis, because I smoked in my apartment and I didn't put a towel down or anything. I just would blow down. And she would ask, because her best friend lived right next to me, who smokes all the time? I can smell that someone's smoking weed. And kind of one day we bumped into each other and she was like, "You're the guy that smokes the weed." So and so it brought us together, man. So little segue story there. Let's switch gears. I want to talk about your involvement with the Munkey brand team. I briefly touched on your title, which is Chief Development Officer at the beginning of the episode. Tell me about what your role is and what you're doing for the company.
Yeah, so my role with the company, I've been here for essentially since we started almost 6 years ago, and it's evolved. I was a bud tender, I was a dab tender, host, and then I jumped into the media side, working on the magazine and merch and things like that. And so at the moment, and moving forward, I'm going to be focusing really heavily on team culture, IP, and the way whatever we put the Happy Monkey name on, anything visually and optically, however we present ourselves, and really developing from the brand that we were. We also had a logo relaunch back in October that switched our logo from a monkey to the monogram that we have now. And yeah, my day to day, I work alongside a woman named Vanessa Perez, and who's our head of operations and HR. And we're like essentially the right and left hands of Happy Monkey. So she handles a lot of operations and logistics, and I help her with that. And I handle a lot more of the creative, experiential side. And we just essentially go back and forth, helping and teetering each other on that kind of those two focuses. And so I'm in the office every day. It's kind of surreal from moving from the nightclub to being in the office from 10 till 5, 10 till 6, or what is it now, 7. So we're just grinding away, and now we're getting ready to hire staff for the dispensaries once they open, looking at product procurement, making sure we have the right cannabis, looking at different real estate places, even the build out of the dispensary. I'm heavily dealing with the designers and things like that to make sure that the ethos that from the club that people know and have fallen in love with over the last 6 years is in the new store, but also able to attract new customers and new people who are going to become part of the Happy Monkey tribe.
Yeah, that's so important, man. That's you just like made light go off my head. They're so used to and accustomed to the feel and the experience of, the monkey consumption concept, right? For so long. And you have to translate that over. It can't be disconnected. And I mean, if I hear you correctly, that's kind of primarily your focus, right? On the creative side of the house.
Yeah, and I do a lot of like ops and logistics as well too. But it's not only that we want it to be what people know, right? But it's 6 years. A lot of people have taken bits and pieces from our experience and made it their own as well. So we also don't want it to be stale. We don't want it to be the same track you heard in 2017. We want it to be a new song, but also that's just rooted in that same inspiration. And we're leaders, and so we want to keep innovating and finding ways to kind of just push that envelope and do it big that way. So incorporating all that together, it's been really fun. When it comes to the store, it's been really fun. In terms of the merch, we're about to release too, and we have a couple capsules that are really, before we would sell merch out of the store, so it was never really a big push to do e-commerce and things like that. But now we're jumping into e-commerce really heavily. We're going to relaunch the site soon, and then jump into hopefully wholesale and selling our ashtrays and things like that, because the brand is so known now. But it's just a different speed, and it's beautiful to see the growth of the team and the company, or the brand turning into a company, that's understands its place in time and where we're at, and it's been an amazing journey, to be real.
Yeah. No, it sounds amazing. It sounds like you have a lot on your plate, but it's a lot of initiatives and projects that lead to growth, right? I mean, this evolution that you kind of talked about throughout this episode. So, yeah, David, I really appreciate you taking time to talk to me today. I mean, is there anything that we didn't cover or that you want to leave the audience with before we wrap up?
No, I just want to say thank you for the time. Happy Monkey, been here for 6 years now, and we're going to keep doing it big. Hopefully going to be winning some licenses pretty soon and opening up these retail locations. Mentioned our next event's July 10th at the Museum of Sex, so It's going to be a really amazing event there. And then our 6 year anniversary is going to be in September, and we're going to do another big event in New York City, hopefully then too. And yeah, just you can follow us at on Instagram at Happy Munkey _. I love Twitter, so you can follow us on Twitter at Happy Munkey 420, and we're on LinkedIn and all the other things too. But yeah, just I appreciate the platform and time talking with you.
Yeah, no, of course. And I appreciate you, giving your time as well. I know it's getting late over there on the East Coast. So I appreciate it, David. Best of luck as you guys continue to evolve and grow. And I look forward to seeing your progress in New York City and hopefully beyond at some point.
Thank you. I'm excited to stay connected.
Yes, absolutely. We will. And thank you all for listening. Bye.